Hello and welcome to America's Show by Sammarco. This is my new YouTube show where we'll be talking about issues that are pervasive across the country, and we'll talk about them from a Republican lens and a Democratic lens. This is a show for everybody, and I encourage you to share it with family and friends across the political spectrum. Today, we will have our very first guest, who is Lauren Windsor of the Undercurrent. Lauren is known for her undercover work and investigative journalism exposing Republicans throughout the country. I'm so excited to have her on today. Welcome to America's Show, Lauren Windsor. We're so happy to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Allie.
Yeah. So for those who don't know Lauren, she is the executive director of the Undercurrent, which is a project of American Family Voices. And Lauren is a profound investigative journalist, and she's also my colleague. So I'm really happy that you're here today. And we can just, God.
I'm glad I could join you on your first show. This is exciting.
Yeah. So we can just jump right into it. And I feel like we should discuss the trending topic of the week, which is the Samuel Alito tapes. We should just call them the Alito tapes. So let's talk about them. So what do you want people to take away from these tapes? Like, what is the most important thing that you feel like came out of them?
Well, the overarching thing, there's numerous points I think that are important, but I think the overarching thing is that America really is at a crossroads. There's so much at stake here when you talk about our traditional form of secular democracy. It's a tradition in this country. And do we want to uphold that tradition, or do we want to be led to a Christian theocracy by an activist Supreme Court? I think it's really important for voters to have more information on that. And Congress will be really key in making sure that Americans get that information. It just remains to be seen whether or not there's the willpower to do that.
Yes, I completely agree. And I feel like it is almost our job, or the media's job, to hold people accountable, particularly on the Supreme Court, because if we don't, then who's going to? So on that note, I have seen some criticisms of people who say, oh, well, I like what you did, or I like what you found out, but I don't like the method in which you did it, or I don't agree. I think it's unethical. So what do you have to say to those people that say, I don't know about that. I don't know about misrepresenting yourself. I feel like that's unethical.
Well, what we're trying to do here is in service of a greater public good. These aren't really that consequential of misrepresentations. What we're talking about is a justice talking to nearly a complete stranger about their philosophy of jurisprudence. Is pretty shocking to me to hear it, given Justice Alito's answer his first year. So I know there's a lot of pearl clutching, but at the end of the day, my lies in representing my, being a fangirl to Justice Alito, does that really harm anyone? I registered in my own name. I paid for a ticket. So if they had wanted to do any research about who was actually attending their event, they would have known pretty quickly the type of work that I do and might have asked more questions or vetted me in a more stringent manner, but that didn't occur. So I would say if you're concerned about ethics, the more important ethics to be concerned about here are that of the justices, Justices Alito and Thomas in particular.
Yeah. And I think it's important for people to know that it's not like this event was for conservatives or for Republicans. It was open to members of the Supreme Court Historical Society. And we didn't check a box saying, we're Republicans. So we showed up and we were introduced as ourselves, and we just had a conversation. And the idea that a Supreme Court justice just like willingly talks to someone in the public that they don't know like that much. And you can see the difference between Alito and Roberts, and how Roberts was like much more reserved, much more, he was conservative in what he said. And I feel like Alito, I don't know if it's the arrogance like we've talked about, or like the feeling like he's untouchable, but he just kind of wouldn't stop talking to us. So
and I think that there's a lot of things at play there. There's some arrogance as to he thinks that he should not have to be held accountable to anyone. There's also the grievance with the media. He thinks that he's been unfairly targeted or that conservatives are unfairly targeted. But everyone I've talked to, and this isn't just, reporters or people who work in politics who might have an ideological bias, but attorneys, people within the profession, is this newsworthy what he said? Do you think from a legal perspective that this is a substantive newsworthy item? Is this a big deal? And universally, every attorney that I talked to before publishing this thought that it was a really big deal. I'm kind of curious. I'm going to turn the tables on you for a second. I want to know, how you felt when you walked up to Alito.
Well, I was excited, first of all, because I wasn't sure if he was going to be there. And I actually am a little shocked he showed up with his wife, amidst all the flag scandals and controversy that they're going through. So I think we were both really excited when we saw him. And I just wanted to have a genuine conversation. I was hoping to kind of get him a little bit more privately, and then some people walked up and were standing right there. So it was a little bit harder to talk to him one-on-one. But no, I was just full of adrenaline.
But did you know when you were engaging in the conversation with him that, oh, wow, he's telling me something that this is newsworthy. This is going to be something that people care about?
A little bit. Yeah, I did. When he started talking about ProPublica, I was like, oh, okay. So you're explicitly mentioning a specific media organization. And I mean, ProPublica is one of the most neutral, ethical publications that's out there. And the fact that he thinks that what they're doing is targeting or not necessary, I find that very disturbing. But to them, being held accountable feels like oppression, when when they're being held accountable in any form or fashion and they haven't been held accountable before, then it feels like oppression. And the same thing could be said for Donald Trump being held accountable in court. So
it's that whole grievance mentality that they share.
Yes, exactly.
Victimization. Oh, I'm such a victim.
Right. They're coming after me for every little thing I've done. And once we're done with this nonsense, I'll get to do whatever I want. And in the words of Martha and Alito, calling the Supreme Court nonsense, I find that super offensive. I don't know. What do you think, Lauren?
Well, I was unclear as to what she meant by when he's done with all this nonsense. So yeah, that was disturbing. I don't want to speculate as to what she specifically was referring to. I mean, I think to me, she's alluding when he's done to all this with all this nonsense. It could have been brouhaha. It could have been, whatever the scandal was surrounding the flags. But the main thing I took from that was that it was an indication that she's looking very much forward to his retirement. So that gave me the clue that, oh, they're really thinking about retirement right now. And so he's 74 years old. He's on the cusp. This is a man who is an ideologue, and he's not going to retire if it's a Democrat who's in the White House. So that's pretty assumptive. She said another thing with a time horizon attached to it that, oh, there's a 5-year statute of limitations and I'm going to go after these media companies. I'm going to get them. And so the wife of a sitting Supreme Court justice is not going to sue a media company.
Yeah.
Right. If there's a 5-year statute of limitations, that really assumes that her husband is going to be off the court for her to do that. For him to be off the court, Trump would have to be in the White House. So, not only do they have retirement really on the brain, but it provides another example of something that's a conflict of interest for Alito in his decision making, because he's going to potentially be ruling on things that could affect the outcome of the election in Donald Trump's favor, which would, be positive for Sam Alito, because then he could finally be rid of all the nonsense and retire.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of people didn't even pick up on that, which is she's really inferring that he'll be done with this nonsense shortly, which would mean Donald Trump is in office, and he's currently ruling on a case regarding Donald Trump's election, essentially. So I think there's so many conflicts of interest that there's no doubt about it that he shouldn't be on this case and he should recuse himself. But I think it's going to be up to Senate Democrats to put the pressure on him. I don't know that he'll ever do it, but what do you think? Do you think there's a world in which he would recuse himself?
Yeah, I mean, I think if enough of the justices pressured him to do so, I think that Chief Justice Roberts could force him to do it if he really wanted to. But, does Roberts want to do that? Because it's not like he's been reining him in, even though everyone wants to say that Roberts is the institutionalist. Well, okay, because he gave the right answer when I asked him a similar question. He's still enabling Alito and Thomas in this behavior. So, I would love to believe that he's being sincere. I just haven't seen much action in that regard. And I hope that he does take some action to at least restore the credibility of the court.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Okay. Let's wind it back in time. So you have been an undercover journalist for how many years now?
Well, I mean, I guess it's really been since before the start of my web show. So just to give your viewers some context, I was an Occupy activist in LA. I became a self-taught videographer. I was filming protests. I became a protest junkie. I was wanting to document history. It felt so invigorating. I felt so alive being amongst people fighting for social justice. And, it was out of that grew this idea for a web show called The Undercurrent. And the reason it was named that was because I was trying to pitch it to the Young Turks, and they had a show, their flagship show was on Current television. So I pitched it to them, and, I'm trying to think the first time I went undercover was actually before the show was launched. It was when I met my mentor here in DC, Bob. It was in Baltimore. I'd never done this before, but I just walked into a GOP retreat that, it's for the GOP, like House members during the winter session, right? Like right as Congress is being reconvened. I just walked in. Nobody said anything to me. And I talked to Alan West. I talked to Frank Luntz. I was rubbing elbows with, John Boehner and Paul Ryan.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. I was by myself. And I'd never done anything like that before. I was just kind of testing the waters. Can I even walk in the door? So I did, and talked to people. I got some photos, and I didn't have an objective really behind it. I wasn't trying to get some definitive answer. I didn't have recording devices going. I just was living in the moment. And I realized pretty quickly that if I hung out any longer, I was going to get arrested or kicked out or something, because they were calling everybody into dinner. So
you're like, gotta go.
Well, I walked into the ballroom just because I wanted to have a good look around. And then it was on the way out of the ballroom doors that I, ran into Paul Ryan, which was interesting. Right in front of my face.
Yeah.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
So I walked over and grabbed a glass of water at the bar. And it was when I was there getting this glass of water, I turned and I see John Boehner. He was then Speaker of the House. And he makes a beeline for me. He makes eye contact. He makes a beeline over. And I was like, okay, I'm made. He made me. He knows exactly what's going on. He's like, who is this woman I've never seen before? And I was just like, Speaker Boehner, it is so good to see you. You are looking so well. How are you? And he was like, just kind of shaking his head. He's like, I'm very well. Thank you. And I'm, fumbling with my my phone, trying to take it out so I can get a photo. I was like, would you mind taking a picture with me? I'm such a fan. And he's like, of course. And so as I'm fumbling with my phone, trying to get the app open, he says, so what are you doing here? And I said, my cousin, I'm in town for my cousin. She runs an art gallery and she has a big opening this weekend. And he said, well, that's great. But what are you doing here? It was at that point that I was like, and I'm a political blogger. And at that time, it had a website where I was blogging about primarily like Wall Street chicanery, Wall Street related stuff and politics. And on that, he turned on his heel and marched into the ballroom. And so I hightailed it out of there. But I had the Capitol Police visit me and question me and ask me why I was on the floor. And yeah, it was, there's more elements to the story about how I found out where it was and got there. It was very sort of hippie journey extravaganza. But when they questioned me, they said, I'm a guest at this hotel. I walked in. They're like, how did you get in? I was like, I walked in.
Right.
But there must have been something more than that. It was like, well, I walked in the front door and no one stopped me. There were people standing right there.
Right. When you are a cute girl, you can get away with a lot. You can walk in with bats an eye.
So they were really dumbfounded that I could just walk in the front door without anybody saying anything to me. And so they let me go, just saying, obviously understand that you can't go up on that floor again. I was like, don't you worry about that. But I knew my rights. I stood my ground, and it wasn't just one Capitol Hill police officer. I had one guy talk to me initially, and then after I'd gone up to the room, 3 of them came up and knocked on the door, and they were just like, we think it's really funny what happened. Like, really funny. So funny. You're not in any trouble whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you need to understand that we need to understand what you did. And I was like, I don't know how much more clear I can be that I walked in the door.
You're like, I took steps, I opened the door and came through. That is so funny.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And so then we hightailed it out there. There's actually a progressive caucus, which is the progressive House Democrats who are having their conference at the Marriott down the street, and ended up walking into the bar and, retelling the story with more detail to my partner, Bob Creamer, who, became a mentor to me. He's very much a father figure, family. And we're now business partners in the same firm. But he took me under his wing after that. After telling him the whole story, he throws his card on the business table and he says, you got a lot of moxie, kid. You ever need anything, you let me know.
Oh.
And so, we developed a mentor-mentee relationship, and he's done that for so many people. Not, probably not quite everything that he's done for me. He really believed in my work. He introduced me to the late Joel Silberman, who is a really great media coach who gave me early media training, and Mike Lux, who would become really like my day-to-day much more close business partner. Bob and I work in the same office, but Mike and I are in the same firm together. We're very simpatico politically. It's been over 10 years. It's very, it feels like home, when you have your people, your family. It feels nice to be fighting for social justice together. I mean, there's legends in my firm that I can't comprehend all the battles they fought together. So it's a pretty great feeling.
Yeah, that is so cool. I never knew that story. So that's hilarious. It all got started there. And then
I did. And kind of on a fluke, because we didn't even know that this was going on, that all of these legislators would be in Baltimore. What had happened was there'd been a bunch of Occupy related events. It was Occupy Congress. A bunch of people came out from the Occupy media team in LA. And then after that stuff was done, I was just wanting to fuck around and hey, let's go like talk to politicians on the Hill and try to hold them accountable. Let's just, bird dog them. And we couldn't find anybody. No one was in the halls of the administrative buildings. And then finally I knocked on one from Tennessee who I kind of knew tangentially. Like I didn't know him personally, but he had dated a girlfriend of mine, her mother, like a girlfriend of mine in high school, her mother for a long time. Okay. And so when I told him who I was, he was like, oh, well, of course, come on in. And as we were talking, ended up saying, yeah, everyone's out of town and they're in Baltimore. So it was a really interesting journey. When I said it was like a hippie extravaganza, it was because one of the girls that we were with had a VW van that we took up there. So it felt very like Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, the gang's all together.
Yeah, it was fun.
Who was the legislator from Tennessee?
Steve Cohen.
Isn't he still in office?
He is. He's still in office.
Yeah.
And I never see him anywhere. So I have yet to like recount the story to him of like, you might just be the reason that I met Bob and I moved to DC.
Yeah. So full circle moment. He's the Democrat that introduced the bill to censure Justice Samuel Alito.
Wow.
That is amazing.
And I'm sure he has like zero clue that I was the same woman who showed up on his doorstep, like 12 years ago. So I'm going to have to reach out to him just to, make him aware of that fact.
Yeah, that's too good.
It's so funny. It's such a small world.
Yeah, that was amazing. So out of all the stories you've done in the reporting that you've done, what do you think is your favorite one?
Well, I mean, right now it's this one.
Yeah, I figured.
It was fun to do it with you too, though. I mean, it's in the past, I was trying to think about Eastman was a great one. I had a great time with Tuberville in Georgia in 2020.
What happened there? I forgot.
That was the scoop that he was going to be the senator to challenge the Electoral College.
Oh, right.
Mm. So that Ron Johnson was fun. But in terms of just media impacts, really, Eastman and this one, I had a big story with the Koch brothers in 2014 that was huge because I had a source that gave me 10 hours of audio. So that story kind of rivaled this one for press attention, but they weren't inviting me on the shows to talk about it. They were basically having their contributors talk about my reporting. And so, it wasn't as fulfilling, but it was still really fulfilling to see that people cared about the stories and that it was generating impact in the political world against the Koch brothers for, holding this retreat and trying to, buy off all these different candidates. Oh my God, did I tell you about the flowers I got today, Allie?
No.
Yeah. So this older gentleman, it's so funny actually, heard about this story and he thought that I was really this, Catholic, devout Catholic, trying to convince the court to, go towards a theocracy. And he was so angry and he was just like, yeah, I am Jewish and America will never be a Christian nation. And, I think he had served in World War II or something. And it was like, that is against our founding principles. And you need to, get out of this country, bitch. Like, got very, very aggressive about it. In this message, I could tell he was very worked up and very passionate about it. And I was just,
you're like, sir, you're fighting the wrong fight.
Yes, and I try to be amused by any hate mail that I ever get or hate messages that I ever get, but in this case, it was just like, this is a very confused person, and so I didn't want him to just be walking around with a rage boner all day, so I called him and I was like, "Hello, Mr. Da 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 da." He's like, "Yes." And I was like, this is Lauren Windsor, and I got your message. I just wanted, and like, look, I was pretending. I went undercover. That was not really me. And he was like, "What? Oh, wait, did I do something wrong?" He's like, "I did something wrong."
Sorry for cursing you out and calling you a bitch.
Yeah, I mean, he was telling me, in very colorful terms to get the F out. But he was very contrite and sent me these flowers today, so it was very sweet. Have you been getting any hate mail?
Not really, no. Yeah, almost none, which is crazy. But gotten a lot of supportive messages and nice DMs and people who are like, keep up the good fight, and they have like other things that they have of Alito or like stories from Alito of Alito from the past that they like want to share with me. I'm like, thank you. Don't know what to do with it, but
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah.
I've gotten a lot of positive messages. I haven't really had time to dig through it all, but I have definitely gotten some nasty messages, and I'll end up sharing those on Twitter. So if you guys want to follow at LA Windsor, you can read some spicy hate mail.
We love hate mail. It keeps us going.
What?
I said it keeps us going.
It fuels me, really. If you think that it is in any way putting out the fire that I have of vengeance to hold people accountable, I assure you that you're only fueling the fire. So keep sending it.
Yeah, exactly. It stokes the fire. It doesn't put it out.
Yes.
I love how that guy, like, how much passion that guy had, even though it was the wrong place. Like,
that's why you really just have to like take people's messages with a grain of salt and not be offended by it. And I oftentimes like will actually reach out to people who've written nasty messages and not clearly wrong in that like they understood it wrong, but they are clearly in the wrong themselves.
yeah.
And like, you know what? You should have a great day. Like God bless you. I hope that, your day is looking up and,
That's always a good one. God,
have a nice life.
Yeah.
Jesus loves you.
Jesus loves
I always like to bring it back to that place of Jesus loves you, because these are, often very religious folk who, are wishing you death or something close. So
right. Yeah, it's always like the Christian moms of 3 that are like, fuck you, you're a
and what I love is the reflexive thing of, oh, you dirty, or you ugly, fat, dirty bitch. Like, okay. Whatever makes you feel better about yourself, keyboard warrior.
Yeah. I love when people they comment to me like, wait till one day when you have kids, or like you're single and alone and like you're gonna be with your cats for the rest of your life. And I'm like, meanwhile, I like have a kid and like you have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, I got one of those already where it said, you just strike me as someone who's a single cat lady. You're going to die with your cats. I was like,
I think that's like the worst insult they can come up with. And it's like, that sounds pretty great. Like, just, doing your own thing. I'm like, kids are a lot of work. Like, I wouldn't mind relaxing with some cats. Okay.
Meow, 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 meow.
Bye, baby. Bye, cat. Meow, 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 meow. Meow, meow. She's a bad girl.
Meow, meow. Like that Miss Alito is a cat lady.
So you have an upcoming documentary, Gonzo for Democracy. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so really it's about my journey across America over the past several years to expose election deniers and threats to democracy. So, you follow my reporting, the undercurrent, and then there's kind of this meta story of really the journey of the country in communities across the Midwest, factory towns. We've done a lot of research on with my organization, American Family Voices. And this story of economic decline that led to the rise of Trumpism, that led to, really the conditions that put January 6th into play. So understanding how we got to January 6th and how we make sure never to go there again. And it's really ultimately a story of how do we really come together as a country and prevent a a Christian theocracy from taking over, a fascist, this threat of authoritarianism to take hold.
Yeah, it's going to be really good, guys. I cannot wait for it to come out. What is the timeline? It's coming out in fall.
We're looking at September. We're still looking at getting financing together for the remainder of the future, but we made a short that we submitted to Tribeca. We're polishing that for doing some screenings, and we have a lot more reporting to do, and we're really trying to break a lot of news with the documentary itself. So that becomes harder and harder as we have to break news in the moment. But I think it was worth it in the case of the Alito tapes, because, I definitely don't want to sit on information when I think that it could have an effect on the outcome of, what's happening with the Supreme Court decisions this month. So,
yeah. And we've seen that play out in the past. And it's very frustrating to see something like the flag controversy that could have changed a lot had that been released sooner. Okay, so last final question, just a fun one. So who is someone that you idolize, whether it's in journalism or politics, that you have a lot of respect for or want to emulate?
Well, I mean, it probably sounds too obvious, but I really love the work that ProPublica is doing to hold this court accountable. They really did a massive public service. I think we all owe them a huge debt. How many decades was it that nobody had any idea how much money Clarence Thomas was actually taking in undisclosed gifts? So,
yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, the idea that Alito attacks them as, doing us a disservice or doing them a disservice is just ridiculous. Like, I feel like it's up to us and it's up to the media to hold people accountable. And it's very clear that the Supreme Court is not able to hold themselves accountable. So we are very thankful for ProPublica, and I really appreciated how they were defending themselves publicly against Samuel Alito's comments.
Thank you all so much for joining us for this very first episode of America's Show. I hope you enjoyed the interview, and we'll have our next show next week. See you guys then.